Do that matter?
Yes, it does.
I don't know if y'all got some type of sexual relationship going on.
I am a sovereign man. I am a man of flesh and blood. You don't own me. You don't rule me.
I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Tresian's death.
I've never, ever seen anybody like you.
We walk into a courtroom expecting remorse, maybe even tears, but killers smiling, laughing, and celebrating their own death sentences. Today, we're diving into the most chilling moments ever caught on camera, where brutal murderers mocked their victims' families and turned justice into a twisted performance. And what the last defendant did will haunt you forever. In July 2013, a suffocating stench permeated a neighborhood in East Cleveland, Ohio. Residents couldn't ignore it any longer, and when police responded to calls about the overwhelming odor, they made a discovery that would haunt the community forever. Inside and around Michael Madison's property, investigators found the bodies of 3 women, each wrapped in plastic bags and discarded like garbage. 38-year-old Angela Deskins, 28-year-old Shatisha Sheely, 18-year-old Sherelda Terry. All 3 had been kidnapped, strangled, and their lives stolen by Madison. 2 bodies were discovered near Madison's house, and the 3rd was located in an overgrown field roughly 100 yards away. When investigators searched Madison's apartment, they found decomposed human remains, evidence of a killing spree that had turned this residence into a house of horrors. Madison was swiftly arrested and charged with multiple counts of aggravated murder, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse.
Killing headline from East Cleveland. Authorities believe they could very well have a serial killer in custody. 3 bodies found already. Investigators say they've been told by the suspect there could be more.
During the trial, the evidence was overwhelming. The jury returned a verdict, guilty on all counts. As the word guilty echoed through the courtroom, the families of the victims wept, tears of relief and justice. But Michael Madison had other plans. He wasn't done inflicting pain. When Van Terry, Sherelda's father, stood before the court to give his victim impact statement, something unthinkable happened. Michael Madison, sitting at the defense table, began to smirk. Off camera, away from the direct view of the court, Madison looked at the grieving father and smiled, a cold, calculated expression of contempt. Van Terry saw it, and something inside him snapped. In an explosion of rage and anguish, Terry launched himself across the courtroom, vaulting over tables in a desperate attempt to get his hands on Madison. Court officers swarmed immediately, restraining the heartbroken father as he screamed. The courtroom erupted into chaos.
Breaking news, dramatic moments in the sentencing of convicted serial killer Michael Madison. The father of one of the women killed by Madison attacked the serial killer during sentencing this afternoon. You can see the chaos after the man lunged at Madison.
Terry was eventually removed from the courtroom, still yelling, still broken by the sight of that smirk on Madison's face. But Madison's disturbing behavior didn't end there. When the judge addressed him directly, preparing to hand down his sentence, Madison sat in his chair, rocking back and forth, slowly, methodically, almost rhythmically.
Angela Deskins and Sherelda Terry to your apartment for your depraved purposes. You went on to abuse the corpses of these 3 victims. You stripped them from the waist down. You folded them in half.
It was as if he were in his own world, completely detached from the gravity of the moment. The judge's words seemed to bounce off him. He showed no fear, no remorse, no humanity whatsoever. The judge sentenced Michael Madison to death.
Accordingly, the sentence of death is imposed upon the defendant Michael Madison on counts 1, 4, and 7.
He would join Ohio's death row, awaiting execution for the 3 lives he stole and the countless others he shattered. But even as the sentence was read, Madison's expression remained cold and empty, a man utterly devoid of conscience. Michael Madison's smirk was chilling, but at least he stayed seated. Tyrell Webster took his contempt for the court to an even more disturbing level, because when a blind woman stood before him, ready to offer forgiveness, he decided to laugh in her face. Tyrell Webster's murder of Grover Watson was the result of a heated argument that escalated into deadly violence. Webster shot Watson, ending his life over a dispute that should never have resulted in bloodshed. When he was arrested and brought to trial, the evidence against him was clear. He was found guilty of murder, and now it was time for sentencing. But Tyrell Webster wasn't about to show remorse. From the moment he stood before the judge, his demeanor was one of dismissiveness and arrogance. When the judge asked him questions, he responded with barely concealed contempt, shrugging off the severity of his actions as if he were being scolded for a parking ticket.
Do that matter?
Yes, it does.
Then came the victim impact statements. Grover Watson's sister approached the stand. She was blind, navigating the world without sight, but determined to face her brother's killer. Despite everything Webster had done, despite the hole he'd torn in her family, she had come to court with something extraordinary in her heart: forgiveness. She began to speak, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words. She talked about her brother, about the pain of losing him, but also about her faith and her decision to forgive the man who had taken Grover from her. It was an act of grace that most people couldn't even fathom.
But when I heard the story on the news, the first thing I did after I could close my mouth was just to ask God to forgive you, because you didn't know what you were doing.
As she spoke, Webster began to laugh. It wasn't a nervous laugh or an uncomfortable reaction. It was deliberate, mocking, cruel. Someone in the courtroom noticed and immediately pointed it out to Watson's sister, informing her that the man she was trying to forgive was laughing at her words. The revelation hit her like a punch to the gut. Her composure crumbled.
Just so you know, he's laughing right now.
The forgiveness she'd been prepared to offer evaporated in an instant, replaced by hurt and anger. She broke down, devastated not just by her brother's death, but by the realization that his killer found her pain amusing.
I really don't care about this, because you know what, you laughing now, but the moment they get you behind those prison walls for the rest of your life, you will be somebody's girlfriend, and that smile will no longer be on your face, it will be tears.
The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Even hardened court officers looked shaken. When it came time for sentencing, the judge made it clear that Webster's behavior had been noted. His complete lack of remorse, his dismissive attitude, and his mockery of the victim's family all played a role in the decision.
Notorious tri-state killer may spend the rest of his life in prison. Tyrell Webster was convicted of killing a man in East Price Hill, and as the victim's family asked for justice today, Webster was laughing at them.
Tyrell Webster was sentenced to decades behind bars, where his laughter would echo only off cold prison walls. If you thought laughing at a grieving family was the worst it could get, brace yourself. Luis Bracamontes didn't just laugh. He boasted, he cheered, and he promised to kill again. October 2014, Sacramento, California. Deputy Danny Oliver approached a suspicious vehicle at a motel parking lot to investigate. Sitting inside was Luis Bracamontes, a man with a violent past and nothing to lose. Without warning, Bracamontes pulled out a gun and shot Deputy Oliver in the head at point-blank range. Oliver died instantly. Bracamontes fled the scene, sparking a frantic manhunt. But he wasn't done. As officers pursued him, Bracamontes opened fire again, this time shooting 2 more law enforcement officers. One of them, Detective Michael Davis Jr., was killed. The other survived, but was seriously wounded. For hours, the area was on lockdown, as police desperately searched for the cop killer on the loose. Eventually, Bracamontes was cornered and arrested.
Tonight, that defendant, Luis Bracamontes, admits to killing a local deputy and detective, but his case will still go before a jury.
At trial, Bracamontes pleaded not guilty, but his behavior in court told an entirely different story. He didn't sit quietly. He didn't pretend to be innocent. Instead, he laughed, loudly, repeatedly. He grinned from ear to ear as prosecutors detailed the cold-blooded murders he'd committed. Then he started talking.
We'll break up soon, and I will kill more.
He declared in open court, his voice dripping with malice. He told the courtroom he had no regrets. None. He said he'd be out soon, and when he was, he'd kill more cops. The gallery sat in horrified silence. The families of Deputy Oliver and Detective Davis wept. And Luis Bracamontes sat there smiling like he was enjoying every second. His own attorney confirmed during proceedings that Bracamontes had admitted to the killings and showed absolutely no remorse. When the jury returned with their verdict, guilty on all counts, Bracamontes didn't flinch. When the judge sentenced him to death, something even more shocking happened. Bracamonte smiled, then he clapped, then he cheered. He applauded his own death sentence like he'd just won an award, turning what should have been a solemn moment into a grotesque spectacle. But he still wasn't finished. As officers escorted him out of the courtroom, Bracamontes turned back and shouted a final threat. The courtroom erupted. Officers tightened their grip and rushed him out as family members screamed in anguish and rage. Luis Bracamontes turned the court into his personal stage, and he made sure everyone would remember his performance. He remains on death row in California. You'd think it couldn't get worse than celebrating a death sentence? But imagine a killer so remorseless that even as his own mother-in-law begs for answers, he interrupts her to twist the knife deeper. Randall Moore and his wife, Therese Ann Lynch Moore, were estranged. Their marriage had crumbled, and Therese Ann had moved on, trying to build a life separate from the man she once loved. But Moore couldn't let go. His obsession with control would lead to one of the most horrific domestic violence cases in recent memory. Moore kidnapped his estranged wife and barricaded himself inside her apartment. He was armed with a shotgun. He called 911 himself, prompting police to surround the building. Officers tried to negotiate, tried to talk him down.
He has 20 shells. He wants no one to come to the door.
But Moore was beyond reason. The standoff grew tense, then it turned deadly. During the siege, Moore opened fire. Officer Todd Rowland was shot in the hand, suffering a painful injury, but surviving thanks to his tactical gear and quick medical response.
303 Adam, I've been hit. Okay, 303 Adam's been hit, officer down.
Rowland would later testify about the terror of that moment, being shot by a man who had nothing left to lose. But Moore wasn't finished. Inside the apartment, away from the eyes of police, he committed an act of unspeakable cruelty. He sexually assaulted Therese Ann, his own wife, in what would be the final horrifying moments of her life. Then, he shot her in the face. After murdering the woman he'd once vowed to love and protect, Moore finally surrendered to police. When questioned, Moore's explanation was as chilling as his actions. He said he killed Therese Ann because he was upset that she wouldn't let him see their infant son.
I was a good parent to my sons, both of them. I've spanked my 11-year-old son one time in 11 years, and that was because he spit at his mom. And I cried for spanking him, because I told myself when I was growing up I would never spank my kids no matter what.
In his twisted mind, if he couldn't have access to his child, then she didn't deserve to live. The trial was swift. After just 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Moore was convicted of murder, attempted murder, sexual assault, and kidnapping. Now it was time for sentencing. Therese Ann's mother took the stand, her voice shaking with grief and rage. She began to address the man who had destroyed her family, trying to make sense of the senseless. But before she could even finish her statement, Moore interrupted her. He hurled cruel, hurtful words at the grieving woman, attacking her even as she mourned her daughter.
Read the journal she wrote. She hated you. She hated you. You're a loser.
The courtroom gasped. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Moore looked directly at the judge and the gallery and said he had no remorse for killing Therese Ann. None.
Now I'll tell you point blank, I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Therese Ann's death. It could have all been prevented. All you had to do is let me see my kid. Now you're never gonna see her again.
He didn't care that she was dead. He didn't care about the son he'd left motherless. He didn't care about anything. The judge, visibly shaken but resolute, addressed Moore directly. He made it clear that his actions were among the most cowardly and depraved she'd ever seen.
I've been doing this 31 years. I've never, ever seen anybody like you.
Then he handed down the sentence. 3 consecutive life sentences for the murder and related charges, plus an additional 25 years for the attempted murder of Officer Rowland. Randall Moore would never walk free again. Randall Moore's callousness was shocking, but Keith Ferguson took courtroom defiance to a whole new level. He didn't just interrupt victims, he raged at the judge, demanded the death penalty, and made sure everyone knew he refused to play by the rules. Keith Ferguson's crime spree began with the most unimaginable act of cruelty. murdering his estranged wife in front of their 4 young children. The kids watched in horror as their father took their mother's life, an image that would haunt them forever. But Ferguson wasn't done. He forced the traumatized children into his car and drove them to the home of his father-in-law, James Weber. There, in another act of cold-blooded violence, Ferguson shot and killed Weber as well. The children managed to escape, while Ferguson, now desperate, took a woman hostage and barricaded himself inside her home. Police arrived and surrounded the property, eventually forcing Ferguson to surrender after an hours-long standoff. At his arraignment, Ferguson made it immediately clear that he had no intention of cooperating with the court. He was unruly, defiant, and openly hostile. When the judge addressed him, Ferguson lashed out, shouting and refusing to follow courtroom decorum. The prosecution argued for the highest possible bond, emphasizing the danger Ferguson posed to the community.
The fact that the defendant has already murdered and murdered multiple people and fled and has taken hostages, there's no doubt in my mind that this particular defendant has a high-risk non-appearance or danger to the public.
The judge agreed.
We're going to set it as a $10 million fine.
Months later, Ferguson decided to plead guilty. But even that didn't go smoothly. He refused to comply with the court's procedures, constantly interrupting and acting out.
You understand me? I'm not doing this for these stupid cameras, these
The judge requested a break in hopes that Ferguson would calm down. Instead, he grew even more belligerent. Officers had to physically remove him from the courtroom as he continued to shout and resist. Eventually, Ferguson did calm down enough to officially enter his guilty plea. But then, he made a shocking request. He wanted the death penalty. He demanded that the court sentence him to death.
You can't give me the death penalty?
The judge denied his request, explaining that the death penalty was not on the table for his charges. Ferguson was furious. As he was being led out of the courtroom, he dropped a final, chilling sentence.
See y'all in hell.
A threat veiled in anger that left everyone unsettled. Victim impact statements followed, with friends and family of both victims addressing the court. They spoke of the lives Ferguson had stolen, the children he'd traumatized, the families he'd destroyed.
I knew one day you would kill her. She would always reply, "He loves his kids too much."
The pain in the courtroom was palpable, and through it all, Ferguson showed nothing but contempt. The judge addressed Ferguson one final time, making it clear that his actions were among the most cowardly and destructive she'd ever encountered. She sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Keith Ferguson would spend the rest of his days behind bars. Keith Ferguson raged against the court, but at least he eventually pled guilty. Michael Crane believed the court had no authority over him at all. He claimed to be a sovereign citizen, went on rambling tirades, and cursed out the judge before being dragged away. And his crimes? 3 brutal murders that left families shattered.
Michael Crane, he's accused of killing a Paradise Valley couple and a Phoenix businessman in 2012.
Michael Crane was a predator who struck without mercy, leaving a trail of death and destruction. On January 26, 2012, Crane broke into the home of Bruce Gaudet, shot him in cold blood, and then set the apartment on fire in an attempt to cover his tracks. 4 days later, Crane struck again. This time, he targeted an elderly couple, Dr. Lawrence and Glenna Shapiro. He broke into their home, bound them, robbed them, and then executed them in their bedroom, shooting Glenna twice in the back of the head and shooting Lawrence in the face. Then, just as he'd done before, Crane set their house ablaze, hoping to destroy the evidence. While Lawrence was shot, he ultimately died from smoke inhalation. Glenna died from the gunshot wounds, 3 innocent lives snuffed out by a remorseless killer. Crane was eventually apprehended and charged with 3 counts of murder, along with arson and armed robbery. But from the moment he entered the courtroom, it was clear this wasn't going to be a normal trial. Crane was initially deemed unfit to represent himself due to mental health concerns, and the court appointed him a public defender. Crane was furious. Crane declared himself a sovereign citizen, a fringe belief system that rejects the legitimacy of government and courts. He insisted that the laws didn't apply to him, and that he was only subject to his own rules.
This is a simple thing. I'm not bound by your rules, regulations, statutes, codes, and procedures, and you're aware of this.
Throughout the trial, he went on long, rambling rants about the Constitution, maritime law, and other pseudo-legal nonsense. Then things escalated. During one hearing, Crane lashed out at the prosecutor, shouting accusations and insults across the courtroom.
I know what you're doing, and you know what you're doing.
When the judge tried to regain control, Crane turned his rage toward her, cursing and screaming before officers forcibly removed him.
Your rules, regulations, procedures, and codes do not apply to me. Laws do not apply to me. You don't own me. You don't rule me. We do not have a contract. I'm not bound by your rules, regulations, statutes, codes, and procedures.
When family members of his victims took the stand to give statements, Crane snapped at them, mocking their pain and showing utter contempt for their grief. Despite his refusal to cooperate and his constant disruptions, the trial moved forward. Eventually, Crane entered a guilty plea, not because he felt remorse, but likely because he realized he had no other option. Michael Crane was sentenced to 3 consecutive natural life sentences, without the possibility of parole. He would die in prison, forgotten and alone, his sovereign citizen delusions offering him no escape from the consequences of his actions. Michael Crane's courtroom antics were disturbing, but Bryce Rhodes takes us into even darker territory. This defendant didn't just kill, he tortured. He didn't just disrespect the court, he threatened the judge's life. And when the mother of his victims tried to face him, the courtroom exploded into chaos. Bryce Rhodes is a name that became synonymous with pure evil in Louisville, Kentucky. Along with his 2 accomplices, Anjuan Carter and Jackery Taylor, Rhodes committed one of the most heinous crimes imaginable, the torture and murder of 2 teenage brothers. The victims were just kids, young, innocent, and in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their bodies were discovered in an abandoned lot by a passerby who immediately called 911.
It looks like they're deceased and they've been burned.
Those are kids. Those are kids. There's some shoe prints right here too.
Rhodes was arrested, but he denied everything. He claimed he had nothing to do with the murders. But then one of his accomplices, Anjuan Carter, confessed. He told police the horrifying truth.
He made my reach on this knees, like beg for forgiveness. He tied him up. He tied him up with something. He tied his brother up. He's never seen that too.
Carter claimed that he and Jackery Taylor had been forced to participate in the murders. According to Carter, the boys had witnessed Rhodes killing another man named Christopher Jones earlier that month, and Rhodes decided they couldn't be left alive. Despite the confession and the overwhelming evidence, Rhodes maintained his innocence. He claimed the prosecution had falsified documents and altered evidence to frame him. He said police had planted evidence at his home. He blamed everyone but himself. As the case progressed, Rhodes's behavior in court became increasingly erratic and dangerous. His attorney eventually quit after Rhodes spat on him during a meeting, a shocking act of disrespect that forced the court to take drastic measures.
Nice cheap shot. You a coward. Nice cheap shot. You a coward.
At his next appearance, Rhodes was fitted with a spit mask and strapped to a chair to prevent further outbursts. But even restrained, Rhodes couldn't keep quiet. He hurled profanities at the judge, calling her every vile name imaginable. Then he crossed a line that even hardened court observers couldn't believe. He threatened to find out where the judge lived.
I'm going to keep talking because I don't want to have to see you back here for this. So you're saying you're going to find out where I live at? Okay.
The threat was explicit, menacing, and terrifying. As a result, Rhodes was hit with additional charges of terroristic threatening and intimidating a participant in the legal process. At his next court appearance, Rhodes accused the judge of having an inappropriate relationship with the prosecutor. He called her a racist, claiming the entire system was rigged against him.
I don't know if y'all got some type of sexual relationship going on or what y'all got going on, but I'm definitely going to speak my mind.
Detective Detelli and I have no sexual relationship.
Now I'm talking about you and a prosecutor over here, sir. Are you some type of racist? Or y'all got some type of sexual relationship going on?
His attorney tried desperately to calm him down, to get him to stop talking, but Rhodes wouldn't listen. Then came the victim impact statements. Marie Wren, the mother of the 2 murdered boys, stood to address the court. She was devastated, broken by the loss of her children. As she spoke, Rhodes made mocking gestures at her, sneering, smirking, treating her pain like a joke. Something inside Marie Wren snapped. She lunged at Rhodes, screaming, trying to get her hands on the man who had taken everything from her. Court officers swarmed immediately, restraining her as Rhodes was quickly led out of the courtroom.
Flipped out. I couldn't take it no more.
Marie Wren lunged toward the man accused of stabbing her sons to death and burning their bodies.
The grandmother of the victims also gave a statement, her voice filled with anguish and rage. When it came time for sentencing, the judge made it clear that Bryce Rhodes was one of the most dangerous individuals she'd ever encountered. He showed no remorse, no humanity, no capacity for redemption. She sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. No matter how much they laughed, no matter how much they smirked or threatened or acted out, justice caught up with every single one of them. And their victims' families continue to fight for justice every single day. If you found this video powerful, don't forget to like and subscribe. We cover the most shocking courtroom moments that expose the darkest side of human nature.